The higher self. Looking beyond the vertical model. Bridging series. For many people exploring spirituality, the idea of the higher self has been an important part of how awareness and life are understood. It suggests that beyond the everyday personality, there exists a wiser aspect of ourselves, something clearer, calmer, and capable of guiding us when the ordinary mind becomes confused. Often this idea is placed inside a larger structure. The human self exists here in daily life. Above it is the higher self. Sometimes above that is the oversoul, or another greater level of consciousness. In this picture, awareness appears arranged vertically, like floors in a building or steps on a ladder. The human self looks upward. Wisdom comes from above. Clarity descends downward. For many people, this framework has helped make sense of real experiences, moments of intuition, sudden understanding that appears without reasoning, a quiet inner knowing that arrives when the mind finally becomes still. Because these moments can feel so clear and so helpful, it has been natural to interpret them as communication from a higher self or a wiser identity somewhere beyond the ordinary personality. Before going any further, something important needs to be said very clearly. Nothing about those experiences was mistaken. Nothing about them was imagined. And nothing meaningful that people discovered through those moments is being taken away. The clarity was real. The insight was real. The sense that awareness can open into something wider than the everyday personality was real. What may change is not the experience itself, but how we understand where that experience arises from. Instead of imagining consciousness arranged vertically in layers, human self, higher self, oversoul, it may be possible to see awareness in a different way. Rather than a ladder of identities, awareness may be better understood as a field within which experience appears. Within that field, the human personality still exists exactly as before, shaped by memory, culture, personality, and personal history. But the field of awareness itself is much wider than the structures that usually define identity. When the mind is busy and constantly interpreting experience, perception becomes narrow. Thoughts move quickly. Identity tightens around personal concerns. Decisions feel complicated. In that state, it can seem as though clarity must arrive from somewhere else. But when attention becomes quieter, when interpretation slows and awareness opens, something different begins to appear. Perception widens. Thoughts may still arise, but they are not immediately turned into identity or reaction. Within that wider perception, understanding often appears naturally. A direction becomes obvious. A response becomes clear. A sense of coherence replaces confusion. These moments have often been interpreted as communication from a higher self. But it may be that what people were sensing was not a separate identity above them. It may have been the natural intelligence of awareness itself, becoming visible when perception is no longer compressed by constant interpretation. An analogy can help illustrate this. Imagine standing on the surface of the ocean. At the surface there are waves, movement, turbulence, patterns rising and falling constantly. If you lived only among the waves, you might imagine that the stillness beneath them belonged to another level of the ocean, something deeper and separate. But the waves and the still water are not different oceans. They are simply different expressions of the same ocean. In the same way, the human personality can be understood as the surface movement of experience, active, interpretive, responding to the world. Beneath that movement, awareness itself remains steady. When the surface becomes less turbulent, the depth becomes visible. Nothing has arrived from above. Nothing has been sent down from another identity. The deeper coherence was present all along. Another image can help make this even clearer. Imagine sunlight entering a room through a small window. If the opening is narrow, the light appears as a thin beam. Someone standing inside the room might believe the light comes from a small, distant source. But if the wall opens and the entire sky becomes visible, something becomes obvious. The light was never small. The opening through which it was perceived was simply limited. In much the same way, moments of clarity or guidance may have been interpreted as communication from a higher self because the opening of perception was narrow. When perception widens, the intelligence that once seemed distant is recognized as part of the same field of awareness already present. Some teachings also describe reality using the language of dimensions, often presenting them as levels arranged in a hierarchy. Within that framework, the third dimension is sometimes described as a kind of spiritual school, a difficult level where consciousness comes to learn hard lessons before moving upward. But it may be simpler and quieter than that. What we call the third dimension is simply the range of experience where awareness and physical form meet in a very stable way. Time becomes continuous. Bodies become tangible. Life becomes detailed and relational. Rather than being a lower level to escape from, it is the bandwidth of reality where experience becomes vivid enough to be lived fully, where awareness can meet life directly through relationship, action, and presence. Nothing about this understanding removes what people once felt when they sensed guidance from a higher self. If anything, it brings that experience closer. Instead of imagining wisdom located somewhere above us, it becomes possible to recognize that clarity arises naturally whenever perception becomes open and steady. The personality continues to function exactly as before. Life continues. Choices still need to be made. Learning still unfolds. Nothing about the human experience is diminished. What changes is the sense of distance between the person and the intelligence they once believed lived somewhere above them. The ladder softens. The field becomes visible. And within that field, the human identity is no longer a small self reaching upward towards something greater. It becomes one expression moving within a much wider space of awareness. Take a quiet moment and notice the simple awareness present right now. Thoughts may move, sounds may appear around you, sensations may shift through the body, yet the awareness in which all of this appears remains quietly present. It does not need to be reached for. It does not need to descend from somewhere above. The clarity people once hoped to receive from a higher self has always been quietly available within the same field of awareness that is experiencing this moment now. Nothing has been taken away. Nothing meaningful has been lost. If anything, what once seemed far above has simply become closer. Not somewhere beyond you, but already here, holding the whole movement of life within a single field of awareness. Unified Field Transmission. Robin Wharton. Coherent Field Interface.